Rob Amberg. Rob is one of our 10 North Carolina photographers chosen by John Rosenthal, part of the exhibition at GreenHill Center for North Carolina Art. It's John Rosenthal Retrospective and 10 North Carolina photographers.
So what I've started doing more recently, I guess, is two things. One are those small portraits,
Mhm.
but the other thing I'm paying more attention to are landscape photographs.
Okay.
Now, I was a guy who used to just poo-poo landscape photographers. Man, those rock and tree guys, yeah, there's nothing to that. They just go out and find a rock and a tree and make a photograph. Yeah, and I used to really rag on them quite a bit. And but now I'm finding that that's what I'm doing. I'm doing these more deliberate portraits that are with a larger camera and much slower camera, and they are set up oftentimes. Oftentimes I'm using a tripod.
Hmm.
And so I'm really slowing down the process of doing that. The landscapes are much the same, although those portraits that you saw are pretty much black and white, but landscapes I'm doing color. And I really have not been much of a color photographer.
Why are you choosing color?
Well, it just kind of seems like that's what landscapes ought to be, I think.
It makes sense.
But I'm also doing, part of it is too is digital. I mean,
Mhm.
digital, you can shoot it in color and then change it to black and white in a
Right.
heartbeat. And I do that with some images. But, I've just gotten more attracted to color as I've gotten older. I don't know what it is, but
Wow, you've done decades of black and white, and even though it's black and white, it is extremely engaging. Like
yeah,
there's nothing missing.
well, thanks.
Um,
But like I said, I just feel like, okay, I'm responding to my own body in a way,
mhm.
and just knowing that, okay, I go out and I'm in situations where I'll, you know, kind of instinctually kind of like, oh boy, and invariably I miss it, you
Yeah.
So there's a photographer named Henri Cartier-Bresson, French guy who's dead, who photographed really actively beginning in the 30s and
Mm.
through the probably 70s.
Wow.
And his main thing was a phrase that he called the decisive moment. And the decisive moment in any photograph is when that ball was lifted off the ground. If that ball had been on the ground or whatever, that photograph wouldn't be nearly as strong as it is.
Mhm.
And so he would say, oh, you captured the decisive moment. And any situation is going to be like that. It's going to be the photograph, it's going to be the split second, the 1/125th of a second when the whole scene makes sense.
Yeah.
That's the decisive moment. So that
That's
was a very much a guiding principle for, I mean, mention the decisive moment to John and get him talking about that. Really, he'll talk about it a
I
lot.
think we will.
Well, he'll talk about it a lot more eloquently than I can. And he's, but he again, that was a guiding principle
Mhm.
for a certain type of photographer, a
Mhm.
documentarian, a photojournalist.
Yeah.
That's what we looked for.
Well, that's clearly what you have captured, because you mentioned just a few moments before that you like to capture the moment. And that photo, that's something if you're like scrolling through Instagram, you'll have this one photographer who just happened to have a photo out, at the beach and captured like and it's look at what this person did and it's, just a rave. And I was like, people have been photographing this way for decades. But it is pretty amazing. While on that subject, um, I'm really curious to know a few things about the work you have at Green Hill, because it's nothing like what I've seen in your workspace. But they are women. They all seem to be tattooed, and some of them are in nature, yet they're still black and white. So, what was your thought process? I think just behind all of the portraits, because that's a series that you're doing, but just with these, women in nature with tattoos. I think they're beautiful. I think they're very serene.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I like them too, and that started. Two of the images at GreenHill are of my daughter, who is she's probably she's 32.
Oh, we're exactly the same age.
Okay.
Yeah.
So she graduated from high school by the skin of her teeth, and started mostly, she became kind of like a traveling kid. So she and her best buddy, Kate is my daughter's name, and Kate and Kelsey, would hop into, Kate inherited our very old Honda Odyssey van, and they'd drive the van up to Maine and they'd rake blueberries for 2 months, 3 months, and make pretty good money doing that. They'd hop in the van, drive all the way across country to Northern California, where they'd trim weed for another couple of months and really make some good money.
Sure.
And then they'd land back here again. So in the course of them doing that, they met scores of people doing the same thing.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, there was just tons of people on the road,
Mm-hmm.
and all young, all multi-tattooed. So when my daughter came back with her first tattoo, it was kind of like, okay, well, I need to photograph that. And then her whole attitude for all these people they would meet on the road was, hey, mi casa e su casa. We have a big place. Come and stay as long as you want.
Oh.
So we would get this crowd, sometimes it was a crowd, maybe 6 people who all had dogs, and they would show up here and they'd be here for weeks or a month.
Wow.
Or many months, that kind of thing. They would just be here.
Yeah.
And it kind of drove me and Leslie crazy, because, these were, they were all, when you could get them to work, they worked pretty hard, but
Mm-hmm.
they liked to kick it a lot, just kick
These
back.
are millennials.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, multi-tattooed, very nice, and stuff like that. But I remember the first time they showed up, there were Kate and 3 other people, 2 guys and another girl. And they got in the house, and Leslie would not let them sit on any of the furniture because they smelled so bad.
Oh, wow.
And they were so filthy. She said, you can be in the house, but you're gonna all get in the shower and take showers and clean up. Well, they all went in and took a shower and then put the same clothes back on again. And, there was one young woman in particular who you couldn't get this close to her.
Oh my gosh.
And so anyway, so I,
Traveling.
on the one hand it was driving us crazy, and on the other hand I said, I'm gonna start photographing these people.
Yes.
This is what
Document that.
it's documentation. It's part of what's going on around here in the community and my life. So I started just photographing them, and then over a period of time that has evolved to doing those same kind of slow, deliberate portraits of other people in the community or other people in my life. And I have really I like that process. I like the slowness of it, the deliberate thing, and it's much different than the way I used to work. It's a total...
So instinctual, and now you're back to almost formal.
Yeah, almost formal, but those photographs, like the ones that are GreenHill, they have a certain formality to them, but I also think they have an instinctual thing about them. You know, generally the camera I use will shoot 120 film, which is 12 negatives on a roll of film, which isn't very many.
Right.
But if I'm photographing you, I would probably shoot a whole roll of film, or maybe more. You know, I just spent a couple hours with my yoga instructor. I did 2 classes a week because I'm old and I need it. But I spent a couple hours with one of my instructors, as I've wanted to photograph her since I started taking with her a year and a half ago or something. But and she's got a great tattoo on her arm, and you know, she's young and fit, and you know, anyway. But she's not part of that group. She's not part of that traveling kit. Or, you know, I made a really nice portrait of my brother, you know, with that camera, or my best friend with that camera, you know. And I think that's what I've kind of transitioned to. It's kind of like, okay, you know, I've always photographed people around me, but to photograph them more formally or deliberately like this seems like it's kind of more of an event, you know.
Yeah.
And so that's why I've kind of gravitated to that. And the landscape work, though, you know, I'm mainly doing that digitally.
Okay.
So
Why the difference?
What's the difference?
Well, why are you choosing to do digital photography with landscape?
Probably has to do with not wanting to lug a bigger camera out in the woods and stuff like that. I mean, you know, just I use digitally. I use a pretty small camera, and because I have been using like these Canon digital cameras, which are just huge, and I felt like I pulled that camera out of the bag and people would run for cover, you know. It's like,
yeah, my dad has one of those.
yeah,
It's huge.
it's just, you know, it's like, they're great cameras, no question, but they're heavy. You carry a few lenses and a flash or whatever, and you've got a lot of weight.
Yeah.
And again, that's an old age thing. It's like, I just don't want to be lugging that shit around anymore. And so I've moved to a very small digital camera, which I love, and I do very good work with it. And out in the woods, it offers a lot more flexibility than the larger, older camera does. I mean, you know, because I can do black and white or color. I can change a thing called the aspect ratio in the camera. You know, so I can do square frame, I can do elongated frames, or do 35 millimeter frame.
Yeah.
And I like that flexibility, and I certainly like working on them better than working in the darkroom. You know, that's a question I would ask John Rosenthal if he's still working in the darkroom. And
that's a good question.
yeah, I know. I think the work he did in New Orleans was pretty much digital. It's my suspicion, but you know, I still got all my darkroom equipment, but it's not set up.
Yeah, you don't use it really anymore.
No,
Okay.
even the older work I'm printing digitally.
Okay. Is it just the process is easier not to use the darkroom, or?
You know, there's easier. It's easier once you get the first print.
Okay.
Once you get the scan and the edit where you want it, it's easier. Getting the scan and edit where you want it and matching that with the paper that you're using, that can be excruciating. It can be very, very hard.
Wow.
And sometimes, you know, I feel like I'm in front of the computer for, you know, 2, 3 or more hours, you know, just trying to get the scan right. Not the scan, but the edit right.
Because of the scanning process.
Yeah, you know, you scan an image in, and you know what you would do in the dark room is you would dodge and burn, and you know, get the tones right, and get it so that that photograph sings. You
Mm-hmm.
know, again, has that flow that you're looking for, and that takes manipulating. You know, you're not changing anything really, but you're darkening, you're lightening, you're
Mm-hmm.
whatever it might be. So I mean, I can show you on any of like those photographs right there, which are all from my first book,
I would love to
and you know, but I can tell you almost exactly what I had to do to get that
get
print,
those.
and
Wow.
it's not changed. But if I just printed the picture just as the negative is, it would not look anything like that.
Wow.
I mean, it would. I mean, it would. I mean, you'd see it was the same image. I mean,
Right.
you'd know
But the
that. But
quality would be different.
you know, those images are really well printed, and they're nice. They're tight. You know,
Mm-hmm.
they sing in my mind.
I mean, I don't want to use, they're like documentary quality
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Very
images.
much.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so at the same time, you get that scan, that edit right. And boy, I mean, the problem I always had when I was in the dark room, I could always get a pretty good, if not excellent, first print. You know, I would get that print right, and then you'd go to make the second print,
Mm-hmm.
and the temperature might have dropped a degree or two, and the
And
fix,
that
and the,
affects it?
oh, that would totally affect the image as it came out of the trays.
Okay.
You know,
Wow.
so that kind of thing. And so you're always having to, I mean, it was always a struggle for me to get the second, third, fourth prints,
Mm-hmm.
and get them all to be consistent.
I can imagine now how frustrating that would be. Like, and now you do
Right,
a digital print, and you know they're going to be the same.
right.
And so I'm assuming the photographs you have, the portraits you have, at GreenHill are digital and are all the
They're
series.
digital prints, yeah, but they're
Okay.
film images.
Okay.
So they're negatives that I'm working with, but I print them digitally.
Digitally. Okay.
Now, we don't call it digital now, we call it they're archival pigment. That's a fancy way of saying digital, but avoiding the use of the word digital.
Okay.
And those prints are made on a paper that I've been using for those pictures specifically. That series that I have now, they've been used. This paper is it's produced by a company called Mule, and it's a bamboo paper, so it's really textured. It's just lovely paper. It's wonderful, and I've started printing these landscapes on it also.